Fire run forms are available under the Incidents tab. You can begin a new run form at any time by selecting the template that's appropriate for this incident from the Add Run page. This will open a new run form for you to fill out. Once you've gotten started on a fire run form, it can be helpful to know how to quickly navigate through it. You'll need to complete and save the first tab of the run form before any additional tabs appear. The tabs that do appear will depend on the information that you enter on this page. For any tab, you can choose to click Save to save your changes and stay on the same page, or Save and Continue to save your changes and automatically continue to the next page. You can also click a tab at the top to jump to that page. Keep in mind that if you've made changes to the page you're on, jumping to another tab without saving will...
Let's take a look at how to fill out an NFIRS run form on your fire bridge or your rescue bridge. We won't go through every option in the whole form in this video, but we will take a look at some of the tools that you can use and some of the trickier parts of the form. In this video, we'll be working with a fire incident from scratch rather than starting one from CAD. If you do start your incident forms from CAD, you might find that some of the information in the form that we're going over is already filled out for you. When you first get started with a new form, you'll see only the NFIRS basic information. More information will appear once you save this first tab, and the rest of the form is going to show up based on what you enter here. I'll show you an example of that in just a little bit. You'll see that most of the information here can be filled out with standard form fields that you're probably familiar with, such as drop-down menus or text boxes. There are a few unique tools on this first page that we'll look at though. For starters, notice the calendar icon beside the date field. Now you can always click in the date field and just type the date if you want to, but we do find that most people like to click on that calendar icon and select the date if they do need to change it. This does pop up in a separate browser window, so if you don't see it right away, you might want to look around to make sure that it didn't pop up behind another screen. Scroll lists like this one are pretty common, but you might not know that if you hold the Control key down on your keyboard while you click, you can select multiple options. Now, let's move on to the incident location section. There are a few tools here that might or might not be available to you depending on what your agency has set up, and we'll go over several of them. For starters, notice the lookup button here. If your agency tracks locations and occupants, you can click one of these names to automatically fill in a lot of location information. This particular system is set up for selecting addresses instead of typing them in. If your system is set up differently, you should see the fields available for editing, like I do when I choose to override the selection options. In this case, you can type in the address details until you get to the city, county, and state information. Here you have several different options. You might be able to select this information from a favorite location record, which will automatically fill it in for you. Or if the right location isn't in the drop-down menu, you could also enter the postal code and click Update Now, and you'll see the information populate in those fields. Finally, if the wrong information pops up in these fields, for example if there are two cities in the same zip code and the wrong one gets filled in, you can click the lookup icon to search for the right information. One of the last data entry tools that we'll look at on this page are the quick entry tools for fields that have a lot of possible values. Here we're going to be looking at the incident type, and there are a couple of options for you to quickly look up the correct one. If you know which option you're looking for, you can click the autocomplete icon and start typing. You'll see a list of options pop up that match what you're typing, and you can quickly select one. If you don't, you can click the lookup icon to browse for the right option. You'll see these two icons in quite a few places throughout the form, and you can use them pretty much the same way everywhere. Use autocomplete to start typing and select the correct answer, or click lookup to browse through the full list. Now we're going to skip down a little further. First, notice that there's a checkbox that needs to be selected if you'll be filling out the apparatus and personnel module. We'll be looking at that later, so I'll keep it checked now. Now as you can see, there's quite a few more details that need to be filled out, but since you don't need to watch me do it, we'll just jump ahead. And now this page is filled out and ready to save. Notice that there are two save buttons. The first one saves your changes and stays on the NFIRS Basic tab. The Save and Continue option saves this tab and jumps to the next required tab in the form, which will show up now once you save. Now that you've saved, your incident form is officially begun in the system. Notice first of all that quite a few more tabs have appeared. Which tabs appear is based on what information you filled out before saving. So for example, if this call was only an EMS assist with no fire-related actions, the Fire tab wouldn't show up at all. If we hadn't selected that checkbox for the Apparatus and Personnel module, we wouldn't see the Apparatus and Personnel tab. Next, notice the colors here. The Basic tab is red because I left a few required fields blank when I saved. The middle tabs are blue because we haven't opened them yet, so even if there are some required fields, the system won't flag them until we've had an opportunity to fill them out and not done it. If you're on a tab and you fill out all the required fields and save, you'll also see that tab turn blue. The Apparatus and Personnel tab is orange because that's the one we're looking at right now. On this tab, you can see a message at the top with a warning, and sometimes you might see a few red fields on the tab. These are required fields that aren't filled out. Finally, each time you save a tab, you'll see the validity score in the top left update. Your goal is to have a score of 100, which means that all the required fields are filled out. Now let's take a look at the Apparatus and Personnel module itself. We call this type of section a grid, and once we add the first record, you'll see why. I'll quickly fill out a few details here, and you can see that some of the information that I put into the Basic tab is copied over. I'm just going to add one person here to show you how it's done. Notice that once you select a person, information that you entered in the Basic tab and the Apparatus also fill out here. Depending on your agency's setup, some details from the person's staff profile might also be filled in. When you have all the personnel information filled out for this apparatus, you'll click the Save Apparatus button. Notice that a few rows showed up here, starting a table layout that gives this type of section the term grid. Now if needed, you can enter more apparatus and personnel records to add on to the grid. Let's get started here and add a second apparatus with some personnel. This time I'm going to add multiple personnel. With this scroll list again, you can use the Control key on your keyboard to select multiple names at the same time. Any personnel that you add to this selected list will show up on this apparatus. Notice that when you're adding multiple personnel, you may still need to go through each record and fill out more details for each person. When you're done again, you click the Save Apparatus button. And you can see those records showing up on your grid now. Now that I have this information filled out, note that there's one more very important step that often gets forgotten. When you're done with this tab, you also need to click the Save button at the bottom of the page. That first Save Apparatus button added information to the grid, and it opened the page up for more records, but it didn't save the form itself. If you just jump to another tab without saving here, all the information in this tab will disappear. Keep an eye out for grids like this, which appear on more tabs than just this one. The only buttons that will save the entire form are those Save and Save and Continue buttons at the bottom of each tab. All the other save buttons you might see are for grids like this one. There are quite a few other tabs on this form, each one with specific information targeted towards your incident. We're just going to take a quick look at the Fire tab, which has one last item that can help you fill out your NFIRS forms. Notice that for the first few sections on this tab, there are fields like number of residential living units or on-site materials that might not relate to the specific incident you're completing. If you move on without filling anything in, there's no way for your administrator to tell whether these fields weren't relevant, or whether you just didn't remember to fill them out. You'll want to select the appropriate checkboxes to indicate when these fields aren't relevant. Depending on which checkbox you're selecting, you might see information automatically get filled in, as it does here, or you might see the fields become grayed out so that they can't be filled in. Using the tools and information in this video, you should now be able to fill out your fire forms completely using your FireBridge or Rescue Bridge. Once the form's completely filled out, remember that you'll have no red tabs or fields or warning messages appearing, and your validity score will be 100. The Incident List feature lets you find and view run forms that are saved in your system. Access to the incident list, and to the incidents you see there, is controlled by permissions, so depending on your level of access, you might be able to see more or fewer incidents. Once you open the incident list, you'll see quite a few options to help you refine which incidents appear in the list. The first, and one of the most versatile options, is the ability to apply a view. Different views display different columns and filters, and they might also automatically apply criteria to select which incidents appear. So for example, in this view, only incidents with the status of in progress will show up. The filters you see on the right will change depending on which view you have selected. Make sure to click Go after you make a change to refresh the page with your results. The options on the left allow you to search for incidents. If you use the default search box, the system will search the incident number, incident status, and the name of the user who entered the incident. Keep in mind that you do need to type at least 3 or more characters in order for the search to work. The exact match checkbox lets you determine whether you want to search for incidents with the exact text that you enter, or just incidents that contain that text in one of the fields that's searched. The Filters link allows you to either enter advanced search criteria, or just to click the Go button to apply your search. As we get some search results here, let's take a look at the results that we got using that exact match checkbox. Notice that in our results we found 2 incidents entered by someone with the text admin in their name, although both did also have other information in that field. What the exact match checkbox prevented was finding any results with, say, administrator or admins in the name. If you do want to find results like this, where the text you type might be in the middle of another number or another word, you'll want to leave that exact match checkbox deselected. For both the filters and the search, you can always click the Clear button to remove your criteria and view more incidents. Finally, if you work with the incident list frequently, you might want to set the refresh rate. This controls how often the page will refresh to check for and display new incidents. Once you've found the run form you want to work with, you have 2 options. You can either click the Quick Actions icon to jump right to specific information or specific tasks such as opening the billing view or the incident history. Or you can just click any of the linked blue text to open the run form. The name of the view is what you'll select from that View drop-down menu. An incident list view controls what appears on the incident list, including which columns you see, which filters show up, and what criteria incidents need to meet in order to appear in the list when this view is applied. There are a few different types of views, which we'll talk about at the end of this process. Depending on your permissions, you might be able to set up a view for just yourself, for your entire service, or for the entire system to use. The name of the view is what you'll select from that View drop-down menu when you want to apply this view. By contrast, the description will only appear to you or to anyone else who is going to open this view for editing. You will need to add columns to any view, although it's up to you which information you want to display and in what order. Depending on which columns you do choose to display, different options might appear to you. You'll always be able to update the header, which will appear at the top of that column on your incident list if you want it to be more specific or just more useful to you or your agency. You'll also always be able to select the alignment of information within that column, so if you want it to be left aligned or right aligned. For some types of fields, you'll also be able to select a format, like you'll see here. Once you've added a few columns, you'll also see the sort order buttons appear, which you can click to change the order that any of the columns will appear in. Filters are an optional, but often very useful, part of views. They're the drop-down menus that appear on the right side of the incident list. People will be able to use any filters that you add for this view to narrow down which incidents are displayed by setting new criteria every time they view the incident list with this view. Criteria, by contrast, will always be applied in the same way when this view is applied. Frequently, if you're creating criteria, you might want to include a hint about those criteria in the name of your view. For example, here the name of the view makes it clear that you'll only be viewing incidents with a validity score that's low. Once you click Save, you may be prompted to select the type of view that you want to create. Your ability to create different types of views is based on your permissions. My Views will be available for you and only you to use at any time. For service admins, service views can be used by anyone in your agency. For system admins, system views are available to anyone and any service in the system.